In this fully fictional alternate universe story, nobody expected Yella Beezy's court appearance to flip into the kind of chaos that had fans back home clutching their phones. Like, ain't no way this just happened. From the moment the sun hit downtown, something felt off. The tension in the air was thick enough to slice with a key. Reporters were whispering, officers were pacing, and even folks who just came to be nosy were already recording before anything even went down. But the second word spread that Mo3’s old crew. Yes, that crew, the one fans online always swear still holds unspoken grudges in this fictional universe, had pulled up outside the courthouse. All bets were off. The atmosphere shifted instantly. You could feel eyes darting, security tightening, and a wave of whispers rippling through the crowd like a storm rolling in. People muttered things like, nah, they wouldn't, and this finna get messy real quick. Nobody knew their intentions. Nobody knew why they were there. But everybody knew one thing. When these two energies collide, even in a fictional storyline, something unforgettable always follows. And today was no exception. Sunrise hadn't even fully set over the fictional Dallas skyline when the courthouse plaza began filling with a crowd that looked like it belonged outside a celebrity boxing match instead of a legal building. Reporters stood shoulder to shoulder with bloggers, TikTokers, and neighborhood figures who clearly had no business taking off work this early but refused to miss the moment. The murmurs, the whispers, and the record everything energy spread like wildfire. All anyone could talk about was one thing: Yella Beezy's court hearing. Everybody knew it was going to draw attention, but nobody expected the atmosphere to feel this heavy. It was the kind of heaviness that made the air colder. Even under the morning sun, Beezy pulled up in a black SUV, tinted windows glowing faintly under the courthouse lights. The second he stepped out, cameras exploded, shutters clicking like a pack of paparazzi camped outside a Hollywood scandal. Beezy wore a plain hoodie, hood halfway up, shoulders tense like a man carrying more weight than anyone could see. His lawyer walked beside him, flipping through papers with the false confidence lawyers use when they don't want clients to panic. But Beezy wasn't looking at the papers. He wasn't listening to the advice. His eyes were locked on the crowd, scanning every face with a look somewhere between suspicion and exhaustion. A group of teens nearby whispered loudly, "Why you look like he expecting something to happen?" Another replied, "Man, this whole day feel cursed already." And honestly, they weren't wrong. Electronic lines of energy seemed to hum beneath the surface of the crowd, like something was preparing to spark but didn't know when. Then it happened. A shift, a stir, a wave of reactions so synchronized it looked choreographed. Someone at the back gasped, Yo, is that? Nah, it can't be, but it was." Through the crowd, walking with an eerie, disciplined calm, came a tightly formed group in all black outfits. Their steps were unhurried. Their eyes were steady. Their presence was loud without a single raised voice. In this fictional universe, these were the men long associated with Mo3’s legacy. The same men fans online constantly speculated about, dissected, exaggerated, and mythologized. They weren't the rowdy type. They weren't the make a scene and yell at the cameras type. They were quiet thunder felt before heard, feared before known. Phones rose instantly. Lives started. Voices shook with disbelief. No way they pulled up here. What are they doing at HIS court date? Bro, this finna get ugly. Ulabzy saw them the same moment the crowd did. His entire posture changed. Shoulders squared. Eyes sharpened. Breath paused. His lawyer followed his gaze and nearly dropped his stack of papers, whispering, "You have got to be kidding me." As the group approached, they didn't break formation. They didn't speed up or slow down. They walked with purpose, and that purpose made the security guards instinctively shift. Closer to Beezy, the tallest member of the fictional crew stood at the front, chain catching the sunlight, jaw set like a man who buried too many unspoken things inside him. Their presence wasn't violent, but it wasn't harmless either. It was something in between, something unresolved. Beezy took one step forward, fists subtly clenched. "Y'all really came here today?" he said, voice low but firm. The tall man responded, "Had to. Streets saying too much. Internet saying even more." Beezy narrowed his eyes. Courtroom ain't the place for none of that. "Maybe today it is," the tall one replied. Security moved in quickly. "Gentlemen, back up." But before things could escalate, something surprising happened. A woman stepped forward from the group's small frame, hoodie up, but eyes steady with raw grief that silenced the crowd instantly. Even Beezy paused when he recognized the pain in her expression. People in the crowd whispered, "Who is she? Why's she look emotional? What's going on?" Her voice was soft but strong. "We ain't here to start nothing. We here because too much been left in the dark. Too many stories twisted. Too many folks choosing sides." Beezy blinked, thrown off. "This ain't the place too. It's the only place," she interrupted gently. "In there, people talk. In there, truth comes out. We want to hear it all." Beezy inhaled sharply, caught between pride and pressure. "So y'all came for closure, that it?" The tall man answered instead. "We came because we tired. Tired of guessing. Tired of online detectives macking up stories. Tired of whispers. We want to hear what's said today. And if y'all don't like what you hear," Beezy asked, voice calm but carrying an edge sharp enough to cut. The tall man gave a small, unsettling smile. "Then we'll deal with that moment when it comes." The crowd reacted instantly. Some gasped, some yelled, "Whoa!" Others whispered prayers under their breath. Tension spiked so high you could practically taste the electricity. Security stepped closer. "Enough. Everyone needs to take a step back." But the woman lifted her hand, signaling her group. "We're not here for violence," she said firmly. "We here for answers." Beezy looked at her for a long second. Something shifted in his eyes. Not fear, not anger, but understanding. "Fine," he said. "You want answers? Sit inside and listen. Ain't nothing I'm scared to say. You sure about that?" The tall man asked softly. Beezy didn't blink. "Positive." The two men held each other's stare long, heavy, wordless until the woman stepped back. And the crew turned toward the courthouse entrance. Reporters erupted, microphones flying forward. Questions overlapping into incoherent noise. Beezy's lawyer muttered, "This is bad. This is very bad." Beezy didn't respond. He just watched the crew walk inside. Fans screamed. Cameras shook. TikTok captions practically wrote themselves. "This is history, bro. I can't believe they walked in together. The judge gone lose his mind. The judge gone lose his mind." Beezy finally exhaled, rolling his shoulders before heading toward the entrance himself. But even as he walked, one thing was painfully clear. The courtroom wasn't ready. The judge wasn't ready. Nobody, absolutely nobody, was ready for what was about to happen next in this fictional showdown. The second Yella Beezy stepped inside the courthouse, the atmosphere changed from chaotic to suffocating. The hallway outside Courtroom for B usually felt cold and empty. But today it was packed shoulder to shoulder, with people pretending they had official business when everyone knew they were just there for the tension. Officers kept yelling, "Keep the walkway clear," even though it made no difference. Phones were still out. Whispers were still loud. The anticipation was thick enough to choke on. Beezy stood outside the door, hands shoved in his pockets, jaw clenched like concrete. His lawyer was still talking. "We need to stay focused." No reactions, no comments, no eye contact. But Beezy wasn't listening anymore. His focus was locked straight ahead at the group sitting across the hallway, Mo3’s. Fictional crew. They sat on the benches like they belonged there, calm, silent, watching him. Not with hostility, not with aggression, just watching. And somehow, that was worse. Their calmness felt dangerous. It felt like they already knew something the rest of the world didn't. A blogger nearby whispered into her mic, "Y'all could see the way they looking at each other right now? This hallway feel like a pressure cooker." The tall man from earlier sat with elbows on his knees, staring directly at Beezy. The woman beside him kept her hands clasped like she was bracing for impact. The rest of the crew scattered behind them, forming a wall of quiet intensity. One officer, clearly nervous, approached them and murmured, "Look, y'all gotta behave in that courtroom. Judge already stressed today." The tall man replied without breaking eye contact. "We just here to listen." "Good," the officer said. "Don't forget that." Beezy finally spoke, voice low but steady. "Why y'all coming deep like this? What message you trying to send?" The tall man leaned forward. "Ain't a message. It's a reminder of what?" Beezy asked. "Consequences." The hallway went dead silent. Even Beezy's lawyer shut his mouth. But before Beezy could respond, the courtroom door swung open. A bailiff appeared and called out case number 48C, State versus DeAndre Reynolds. All parties inside. The moment had arrived. Beezy's heart thudded once, hard. Then he straightened up and walked toward the door. But halfway there, the fictional crew stood up too. Not aggressively, just rising to their feet as a collective force. Fans gasped, officers stiffened. The hallway tilted into suspense. Beezy paused, turned, and looked at them. For a second, everybody held their breath. The woman stepped forward. "We sittin' in the back, quiet, that's all. But we've gone here everything." Beezy stared at her, then nodded once. "Then don't twist what you hear," the tall man replied. "We'll see if you twist it." With that, they entered together, separate but bound by a tension thicker than any courtroom air could handle. Inside, the courtroom felt even smaller than usual. Wooden benches creaked as people sat shoulder to shoulder, filling every inch of space. The judge hadn't entered yet, but the energy was already buzzing. Reporters shuffled in. A few attorneys from unrelated cases stayed behind just to witness the spectacle. An older woman with a church hat whispered to her friend, "Chili, the devil is working hard today." Beezy sat at the defendant's table, staring straight ahead. He could feel the fictional crew behind him, not moving, not whispering. Just there. Heavy. His lawyer leaned in. "Remember, stay calm. They want you to react." "Don't give them that," Beezy muttered. "I ain't scared of them." "I didn't say scared," the lawyer replied. "I said triggered." Before Beezy could answer, the judge entered. "All rise." Everyone stood. The judge looked exhausted, like she'd been dealing with nonsense since dawn and was already tired of it. She adjusted her glasses, scanned the packed room, and sighed heavily. "I see today is unusually crowded for this type of hearing." Nobody dared respond. The judge continued. "Let me be clear. This is a court of law, not a music festival. Any disruptions, and I will clear this room." Eyes darted around nervously. Then the proceedings began. The prosecutor stood, adjusting his tie dramatically like he practiced in a mirror. "Your Honor, today we aim to present evidence regarding statements made by Mr. Reynolds that contradict earlier testimonies and raise concerns about 5. He paused dramatically. Beezy's lawyer rolled his eyes like he'd seen this cheap performance before. About potential involvement in activities that Mr. Reynolds has repeatedly denied. Murmurs exploded through the room. The judge slammed her gavel. Silence. Beezy whispered under his breath, "Here we go." Breath. "Here we go." The prosecutor continued, flipping through papers with theatrical confidence. "We have new witness statements, new digital evidence, and new accounts suggesting..." The tall man in the back suddenly leaned forward. Beezy felt it. The prosecutor tried to continue, suggesting that events previously believed to be isolated may in fact involve. He hesitated, glancing nervously toward the fictional crew, individuals connected to the late artist. The courtroom froze. Beezy slammed his hand on the table. "Nah, you ain't doing that." The judge banged the gavel. "Mr. Reynolds, sit down." Beezy dropped into his chair, but his eyes blazed. The prosecutor swallowed hard. "Your Honor, the witness claims that Mr. Reynolds made statements that before he could finish..." The tall man from the fictional crew stood up. The bailiffs jumped instantly. Sit down. Sit down now. The tall man raised his hands peacefully. I ain't doing nothing. I'm just saying, if y'all gonna use his name today, use it right. The judge glared. You speak again, and you will be removed from the premises. The tall man sat slowly. The courtroom stayed on edge, like any wrong word could ignite it. Beezy leaned toward his lawyer. They trying to paint something that never happened. The lawyer whispered, then let's shut it down. Wait your turn. But Beezy didn't wait. When the judge asked if the defense had anything to say, Beezy stood before his lawyer could respond. Your Honor, with all due respect, they trying to drag people into this that ain't even here no more. They trying to twist situations. They trying to write a story for the internet, not for the truth. The courtroom buzzed again. Beezy continued, pointing subtly toward the fictional crew. They came here today. They ain't run. They ain't hide. They sittin' right there. If I had something to hide from them, I wouldn't be here either. The woman in the crew lowered her head. Emotional. The tall man looked conflicted, angor wrapped in grief. Beezy finished, voice shaking but strong. I ain't perfect, but I ain't guilty of what they trying to paint. And if y'all want to know the truth, ask them. Ask the people that know the streets better than any lawyer here. The judge raised a hand sharply. That's enough. Beezy sat down, chest heaving. But the fictional Mo3 crew, they didn't react with anger, they reacted with shock. Whispers rippled behind them. The woman whispered why he talked like that. The tall man stared at Beezy, unsure for the first time all day. He whispered, is he really telling the truth? The courtroom shifted. Nobody expected that. Not Beezy, not the crew, not the judge. Everything suddenly felt unstable. Like the truth was about to break open and nobody knew which direction it would explode. The courtroom was silent after Beezy's unexpected outburst. The kind of silence that felt heavy enough to press down on every shoulder in the room. Even the judge leaned back in her chair, blinking slowly as if trying to process a situation she didn't anticipate. The prosecutor shuffled his papers nervously, realizing that the narrative he had planned was beginning to unravel in real time. He adjusted his tie, cleared his throat, and tried again. Your Honor, if I may continue, proceed, the judge said, though her voice lacked its usual conviction. But before he could get far, a sudden commotion erupted at the back of the room. A murmur had started among the gallery spectators, and within seconds, whispers turned into pointed gasps. The fictional Mo3 crew, who had been sitting quietly for most of the hearing, suddenly stood as a unit. The tall man glanced at the woman beside him, then back at Beezy, and in one fluid motion, they all began moving slightly forward, subtly enough to avoid the judge's immediate attention, but noticeable to everyone paying close attention. A blogger in the back leaned into her camera, whispering, y'all, this is about to get insane. I can feel it. Beezy's eyes narrowed. What now? He muttered under his breath. His lawyer quickly leaned in, whispering, stay calm. Don't let them bait you. Beezy exhaled sharply, gripping the edge of the table as if it were the only anchor keeping him grounded. But it was too late. The tension had escalated to a level that was almost palpable, like electricity buzzing through the room. The courtroom was no longer just a place for legal proceedings. It had become a theater of unspoken challenges and personal stakes. The tall man finally spoke, his voice low but clear, carrying an almost hypnotic weight. We came here to witness truth. Beezy, he said. Not rumors. Not what people say online. Just truth. Beezy's jaw tightened. Truth, he said, voice sharp. Y'all think I've been hiding it all this time? That I'm scared to say what really happened? The woman from the crew stepped closer, her expression soft but resolute. It ain't about fear. It's about accountability. About realizing that too many people got caught up in lies, in stories that don't belong to them. That's why we're here. The crowd in the gallery shifted uncomfortably. Fans were whispering, some nodding, some shaking their heads in disbelief. This is like watching a live movie, one spectator muttered. Nobody expected this kind of energy inside a courtroom. Beezy leaned back slightly, folding his arms. Y'all came here thinking this is about intimidation. But it ain't. It's about seeing the truth. Well, here I am. Ask your questions. Say what you gotta say. I'm ready. The tall man's eyes softened slightly. We gone, ask. But first, you've gotta understand something. Not everyone in your circle is gonna have your back. Not everyone is truthful. And some of the people you trust might be the ones spinning the biggest lies. Beezy's face darkened. You talking about who? The man shook his head slowly. Not now. Not here. But be aware truth comes in layers. And today, we peel them back. And today, we peel them back. The judge, sensing the building tension, slammed her gavel. Order. Order in this court. Everyone froze, but the undercurrent of suspense remained. Even the officers trained to respond to chaos were on edge. The prosecutor, trying to regain control, cleared his throat and said, Your Honor, we have witness statements that may shed light on. Hold on, Beezy interrupted, his voice calm but firm. Before you throw out stories, you should know something. People talk. People spread rumors. But the truth isn't in papers. It's in actions. And the people sitting behind me, they came here to see the truth, not to judge me by what they heard online. The woman in the crew nodded slightly, visibly impressed. The tall man's jaw tightened, as if weighing his next words carefully. Then came the first dramatic twist. One of Beezy's own friends, someone he had trusted for years, suddenly stood from the defense table. The courtroom went silent, eyes snapping toward the unexpected figure. I think it's time we clear the air, the friend said, voice trembling slightly. There's been too much talking behind doors, too much hiding from reality. Some things need to be said aloud, even if it hurts. Beezy's eyes widened. You've gone do this here? Yes, the friend said. Because if we don't, if we keep pretending everything's fine, someone else will control the narrative. And I ain't letting that happen. A murmur rippled through the courtroom. Even the judge raised an eyebrow, leaning forward in her chair. The friend continued, voice shaking but gaining strength. Yella, there were times when people in your camp, they weren't honest. They twisted stories for attention. They made things seem bigger than they were. And today, you're hearing it from me first. Not the blogs, not the streets, not the internet, me. Beezy's expression softened slightly. I hear you. But why now? Why here? Because this is the only place where it matters, the friend replied. And because if I say it anywhere else, it'll just become another headline. Here at least, it's real. The courtroom energy shifted again. The tension wasn't gonna it had evolved. It was no longer just about legal consequences. It was now about trust, betrayal, and the unspoken emotional battles that had been simmering under the surface for months. The tall man in the crew leaned forward slightly. See, truth comes out whether you like it or not. And some of it, it's ugly. But ignoring it won't make it disappear. The woman beside him whispered softly, almost to herself. This is bigger than all of us. Bigger than pride or ego. This is about setting things right. Beezy exhaled slowly, rubbing his temples. Ain't nothing easy about this. You walk into a courtroom expecting one thing, and suddenly, you've got people you trust and people you don't, all staring at you like your life is some TV drama. The judge slammed her gavel lightly, calling for attention. Enough. Let's proceed with witness testimony. But remember, respect this space. No theatrics. No threats. No intimidation. But theatrics had already begun. Whispers turned into quiet exchanges. The crew nodded subtly to each other. Beezy's friend leaned slightly toward him, a protective but serious gesture. Cameras flashed continuously, documenting every second, every expression, every twitch of a hand or flicker of an eye. Then, just when it seemed like the tension might settle, Another twist hit the room. A previously unknown witness, someone no one expected, was called to the stand. She was young, barely in her 20s, but her presence commanded attention. She stepped forward, shoulders squared and eyes locked on Beezy. "I'm here because I know the truth," she said. "And because if I don't speak, the story will be written for me, not by me." Beezy's eyes narrowed, trying to gauge whether this was friend or foe. The tall man in the crew leaned back slightly, arms crossed, watching intently. "I know what happened behind the scenes," the young woman continued, voice firm. "And some of the people who were supposed to protect the truth, they didn't. They lied. They manipulated. And now it's up to all of you in this room to decide what matters more, what you heard or what actually happened." Gasps echoed throughout the courtroom. The judge paused, letting the weight of her words settle. Even the prosecutor swallowed, realizing that control of the narrative had just slipped from his grasp. Beezy leaned forward slightly. "Go on," he said, voice low but steady. "Tell us." And with that, the courtroom transformed into a battlefield of words, emotions, and unspoken truths. Every glance, every gesture, every whispered side comment carried weight. Everyone was watching everyone else, analyzing, judging, and reacting. It was no longer just a court case. It was a dramatic unfolding of personal stakes, unresolved emotions, and hidden alliances by the time the judge called for a recess. The courtroom had been changed forever. Relationships were tested, loyalties questioned. Fans watching the live stream were shocked beyond measure. And the fictional Mo3 crew, they sat quietly, knowing that what they had come for, the truth was finally starting to surface. Outside, the city continued its usual rhythm, oblivious to the drama unfolding within the courthouse walls. But inside, every person knew one thing: nothing would ever be the same, and the tension, suspense, and drama weren't over. Not by a long shot. The courtroom felt like it had been holding its breath for hours. After the recess, the energy inside was even more charged, as if the walls themselves knew something historic was about to happen. Yella Beezy sat at the defense table, jaw tight, hands fidgeting slightly, but his eyes were sharper than ever. Across the room, the fictional Mo3 crew remained seated, silent but intensely focused, observing every movement, every word, every subtle flicker of emotion when the proceedings resumed. The young witness who had just stunned the courtroom with her account was called back to the stand. Her face was determined, but there was a trace of anxiety that made the audience lean forward. "Eager to catch every word, Your Honor," she began, her voice steady despite the weight of the room. "What I am about to say might upset people. It might make some uncomfortable, but it is the truth. And I cannot allow lies to continue shaping this story." The judge nodded curtly, signaling her to continue. Beezy took a slow breath. His lawyer leaned toward him, whispering, "Stay calm. Let her speak. Let the truth unfold." Beezy barely nodded, keeping his gaze fixed on the young woman. He knew instinctively that today would either vindicate him or shake him to his core. The witness recounted events that, in this fictional universe, no one outside the inner circle had fully known. Betrayals, miscommunications, and strategic manipulations were exposed layer by layer. Each revelation caused audible reactions, gasps, murmurs, and whispered "oh no's" spread throughout the gallery. Even the prosecutor shifted uncomfortably in his seat, realizing that the narrative he had rehearsed for weeks was crumbling in real time. And then, she said, her eyes locking on Beezy, there was a moment when choices had to be made. Some chose loyalty, some chose publicity, but only one person acted without hesitation to protect the truth, even when it could have been dangerous. Beezy's expression softened slightly. The courtroom held its breath, waiting for her to say the name, but she didn't immediately. The tension was unbearable. The tall man from the fictional crew leaned forward, whispering something to the woman beside him. She nodded subtly, their silent communication adding another layer to the drama. Finally, the witness spoke. That person was Yella Beezy. The room erupted. The gallery shouted, cameras flashed, and even the judge blinked, clearly caught off guard. Fans watching the live stream exploded with comments like, "No way." And Beezy did what? Beezy stood slowly, letting the weight of the words sink in. "Yeah," he said quietly, voice strong but tinged with exhaustion. "I did what I had to do." The tall man in the crew sat back, crossing his arms with a thoughtful expression. The woman beside him whispered softly. He stayed true. Against everything. For the first time all day. The fictional Mo3 crew smiled, just slightly. The tension easing for a fleeting moment. But the drama wasn't finished. The prosecutor, sensing an opportunity, or maybe desperate to reclaim control, rose to object. "Your Honor, with all due respect. These statements cannot be considered evidence in the formal sense." The judge slammed her gavel, silencing him instantly. "I have heard enough. This court is not a stage for theatrics. But we cannot ignore the credibility of witnesses who present consistent and compelling testimony. I will take this under advisement before proceeding." A murmur went through the gallery. Everyone knew that, although the judge had not rendered a final decision, the momentum had shifted irreversibly. Beezy's actions, loyalty, and honesty had dominated the room. Then came the final twist. A voice from the back of the courtroom, hesitant but determined, called out, "Wait, there's something else." All eyes turned to see another figure, an insider from Beezy's former circle, someone long thought to be unreliable or disloyal. They stepped forward cautiously. "I need to clarify some things. Some of the accusations made earlier are false. Misinterpretations, and I need to correct the record." The courtroom paused again. Beezy's lawyer whispered fiercely. "This could help if it's truthful," the insider continued, recounting details that corroborated Beezy's side of the story, dispelling false narratives, and highlighting the loyalty and integrity he had shown even under pressure. Every revelation tightened Beezy's position, casting his critics in a harsher light. The tall man in the crew nodded slowly. "See? Truth comes out in layers," he murmured to the woman beside him. The woman smiled faintly, eyes glistening. "It always does. Eventually." Beezy exhaled, shoulders relaxing for the first time in hours. But his relief was tempered by awareness. The drama wasn't over in real life, it was only being witnessed here. And the repercussions outside the courtroom would ripple far beyond these walls. Fans watching online were already speculating, making videos, memes, and posts about every single moment. The outbursts, the revelations, the betrayals, the reconciliations. The fictional Mo3 crew had entered the courthouse expecting tension. They left with clarity and understanding. And Beezy. He had not only defended himself in the eyes of the law, but also reclaimed his narrative. The judge finally addressed the courtroom, voice firm but measured. "I will take the testimonies, statements, and evidence presented today into consideration. While no final judgment is being rendered at this moment, this court acknowledges the importance of transparency, accountability, and truth in these proceedings. The matter will proceed with these factors in mind." A quiet cheer swept through the gallery, soft, contained, but unmistakable. Beezy looked around the room, finally allowing himself a small, triumphant smile. The tension had not vanished entirely, but a sense of resolution was beginning to take hold. The tall man and the woman from the fictional Mo3 crew approached Beezy as the hearing concluded. "You handled yourself well," the tall man said, a hint of respect in his voice. "Not just today, but through all of it." The woman nodded. "Sometimes being true isn't the easiest path, but you showed it anyway." Beezy exhaled, a mix of exhaustion and pride. "Took everything I had, everything I learned, and still standing." The crew lingered for a moment, then turned and exited quietly, leaving Beezy to absorb the moment. The courtroom emptied slowly, whispers still echoing, cameras clicking one last time. Outside, fans were shouting, celebrating, debating, speculating, all the chaos of life continuing around this singular event as Beezy stepped outside into the sunlight. the streets seemed to hum with a different energy. People were still talking, still watching, still reacting, but for once, he felt the satisfaction of having confronted drama head-on. He had faced skepticism, betrayal, fear, and uncertainty. Yet here he stood respected, vindicated, and more aware of the truths around him than ever before. And while the story in this fictional universe was far from over the streets, the internet, and even his circle would continue to debate, discuss, and spin the narrative. The most important thing had been achieved. The truth had been spoken. Emotions had run high. The family and crew had been tested. And alliances had been examined under the harsh light of reality. Beezy glanced back at the courthouse steps one last time. He knew that while some questions remained unanswered and some tensions unresolved, the day had shifted the balance. He had survived the storm. And for those watching, fans, critics, and allies alike, the message was clear. Never underestimate resilience, honesty, and courage when facing chaos. The scene faded with the courthouse in the background, fans still buzzing, cameras still rolling, and a sense that history had just been made. And while no one knew exactly what the next chapter would bring, one thing was undeniable. Ulabzy's court day would be remembered forever in this fictional, chaotic, and dramatic universe. And just like that, the dust has settled, at least for now. Yella Beezy walked out of that courthouse knowing he faced one of the wildest, most unpredictable days imaginable. A day filled with tension, truth bombs, and surprises nobody saw coming. The fictional Mo3 crew came through expecting chaos, but instead, they left with clarity, a reminder that sometimes the streets, the rumors, and the internet can't dictate reality. Fans watching from home were left shook, asking themselves, who really tells the truth in these moments? Who really holds loyalty when the cameras stop rolling? And most importantly, what happens next? This isn't just a story about a court hearing. It's a story about trust, betrayal, and facing drama head-on. It's about emotions running high, alliances being tested, and personal truths finally stepping into the spotlight. Beezy showed resilience, integrity, and courage in a world where whispers can spread faster than facts, and where even your own circle can be a battlefield. The courthouse may have closed its doors, but the conversation, the debate, the speculation, that's just heating up. Now it's your turn. What do you think about today's events? Did Yella Beezy handle himself the right way? Or do you think tensions are far from over? Could the Mo3 crew have acted differently? Or did they do exactly what was needed? Drop your thoughts in the comments because we want to hear every hot take, every opinion, and every fan theory. And while you're at it, hit that like button, smash subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss the next shocking twist in this fictional, chaotic, and drama-filled universe. Trust us if you thought today was wild. The next chapter is going to be even bigger. Stay tuned, fam. Stay tuned, fam.